Hello everybody, this is Nate, aka Devil Dog, and I'm back with another game review. This time I am reviewing the fairly just released Dishonored 2. It was just released November 11th of 2016 for Microsoft Windows, the PS4, and the Xbox One. Now once again I gotta specify I am reviewing the PS4 version, not the PC version, so I can't really say any of the nightmares involving that, other than the fact that I've heard that it's very similar to Batman Arkham Knight in terms of how bad the PC version is. But anyways, this game was developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks and runs off a very highly modified ID Tech 5 engine, which they call the Void engine, which can be kind of good and kind of bad depending on what you think. Now, when you first start up the game, it will go into your standard issue options mode, turning up your light to where you could see better, changing your difficulty. It's got the easy, medium, hard, and very hard modes. And I very much got to tell you this right from the start. The difficulty of this one is a lot higher than the last one. So if you thought the last game was too damn easy, don't worry. This one actually has a lot more of a challenge to it. Now, after your typical little startup screen, it will go into an options menu that allows you to do a brief tutorial on how to teach you how to play the game. After that, it'll get right into the story. Now, the basic plot of this game is it takes place 15 years after the end of the first game, and the main draw with this one is you get to play as either Corvo or his daughter Emily. And it does have the return of the chaos system, but this time they have modified it in a bit to where a lot of times in the levels there'll be NPCs that will be added that can be randomized to either they can be good, bad, and depending on that, it can raise or lower your chaos meter accordingly as planned. It does actually have a lot new non-lethal moves that have been added to the game. So if you were a big no-kill kind of guy wanting to play through the full game without getting a single kill, it does give you the options to where it's a lot easier to do it this time. Instead of your normal upgrades scenario, they did add skill trees to your abilities as you go through, and depending on if you play as Corvo or Emily, it will change dramatically in terms of all their different moves they can get and their different abilities. By far, my favorite has to be Emily's move. I'm just going to say it's called Domino, and you have the ability to link up all enemies together, so if you do something to one, they all feel it, so which is pretty damn cool. Now, when the game first starts, it does kind of have kind of a, well, I'm going to say this right from the start. It has a pretty stupid ass beginning. The ending is much more streamlined as well, but the opening of the game is kind of rushed, and I think it's really kind of half-assed the way they actually get things going. I mean, I understand that they got to do stuff to try to get to where you're the bad guy again, but the way they do the opening, I really didn't like. I thought it seemed kind of rushed and kind of a half-assed way to turn you as the enemies. But nonetheless, you know, okay, you can get past the opening, but let's go ahead and get into the rest of the game. Now, after a short beginning, well, I wouldn't say short, but after a nice little opening incident, you basically get to choose what character you want to play out for the rest of the game. So it does give some replayability to the game that you can go back and replay the full game with a different character. At the beginning, you get to choose, like I said, between Corvo and his daughter Emily. And from that point on, you play as that character. You cannot switch back and forth in between the other. You got to play the full game with that character. It does have like a central hub that you meet up with some people. I believe it's like a big boat where you actually meet up with the other people, and you know, you go through, you got to pretty much kill bad guys, progress through to pretty much clear your name and Corvo's name and take back over the area. And the overall length of the game, you figure the first game was only about 8 to 10 hours long. This one is a lot longer. It is roughly about 12 to 20 hours long, and for a full price game, that's pretty decent, especially with the overall fact of how the replayability of the game is. But now let's get down into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about the controls of the game. This game controls very similar to the first one. In fact, it's kind of streamlined, but I have noticed a couple little problems here and there. It almost seems like, especially during the fighting sequences, your button presses don't seem to be immediate. So there seems to be a delay with your button presses during battle. So you have to kind of adjust accordingly to get used to that, because it seems a little off. I've had many instances when someone would go to attack me and I would try to block and I wouldn't press the button at the right time and I got myself killed. So there seems to be a delay there, which I think is kind of a major flaw. It does have some graphical glitches throughout. I've had some screen tearing, I've had some slowdown in several parts, and I have had some not really texture or drawing glitching problems, but I have like some detail problems, like in the distance you can see some glitching with the graphics. Now, the overall AI of the enemy characters is improved compared to the last game, but they do still seem to suffer from some stupidity. I've had several enemies, while they do seem to try to flank you and they're a little bit smarter, they do still seem to just bum rush you and act like really stupid, to where you can kill a guy or they'll kill their next buddy right there, and if they don't spot you, they can literally, like, I've had them actually walk right past the dead body, which they should not have done. They should have seen the dead body, went, oh crap, called for help, but they didn't. So there are some AI issues. There seems to be some problems with some sound layering as well. I've had instances where I've tried to be sneaky and I heard to myself, okay, these guys are obviously in the other room talking, but then mysteriously they're right, instead of my right to my left. There seems to be some layering issues with the sound. I don't know if they're going to fix that in an updated patch or not. Hopefully they do, but that kind of screws up the immersiveness of the game and kind of makes it a little bit harder to play, especially if you want to go the stealth route, because you cannot really actually pinpoint things by sound. The sound is off. Now, overall, the music is fantastic. I love the music. The art style music is pretty much one of the best things about these games that they've made so far. There's been some parts where the music doesn't exactly fit with the area, but all in all, I think the music and sound, music and graphics alone are very well done. Now, the voices, a lot of people had a problem with the fact that Corvo, if you play as him, is actually voiced in this one, and I have more of a problem with seeing his face. I don't like the way his face looks. He looks kind of like a homeless person, but all in all, every time they come out with a voice for a silent protagonist, like in the first game and this one, they always give him like a Chuck Norris kind of deep-throated voice, and while I know it's not bad and it does work for the character, I kind of like them better as being a mute. But since there's a lot of stuff they've added to this where I can understand they did have to give him a voice, since Emily has a voice, which I think is very fitting, but I think Corvo's is kind of off. Now, because of all these issues, I have to actually take that into account with my final score. The overall playability of the game, it plays fantastic. It's a very fun game. You can go all the way through it from start to finish without killing a single person. I find it is a hell of a challenge, but it seems to be a lot more easily done than the first game. The first game had some later levels that were actually a big pain in the ass if you wanted to actually successfully go and actually get through without killing people. This one, like I said, it has a lot of verticality to the levels. In fact, the levels are much larger, vastly improved, though there does seem to be some design issues with the overall fact of how you actually go through the levels. There's a lot of dead ends and stuff like that seem kind of like major design flaws or issues, but it overall doesn't really affect too much of the gameplay. The verticality really adds a lot to it. I mean, there's not like a single level in this game where there's not some other way of actually getting through it. If you're worried about people seeing you and stuff, you can actually get through it fairly easy, and it actually is a lot of fun to play. Now, my final score of Dishonored 2 is a rather mediocre 7.5 out of 10. That's right, I'm only going to give this game a 7.5 out of 10. While it is vastly improved on some routes, it's actually kind of worse than the first and others. The ability to play as both Corvo and Emily is actually fantastic, and the fact they have both different movesets makes the game have a great replay replayability. The addition of new non-lethal moves to get through is a great improvement. The chaos system being modified is a good improvement as well, and I do love the way the skill trees are set up. However, because of the issues with the game, including the layering of the sound, the AI being kind of stupid, and some other glitches, and I think some of the voices and the lip syncing is off, it doesn't really take off from the overall fun of the game, but it does take off points for the overall quality of the game. So that's why, like I said, my final score of this game is a 7.5 out of 10. I want to thank everybody who is out there who watches my channel. I want to thank everybody who actually leaves a comment below. If you feel like it, please go ahead and hit that like button. I gratefully appreciate it. And I want to say thank you so much. And I want to end it by always saying, remember everybody, the devil is in the details. Peace out.